So finally, I want to introduce an important concept here. That is the concept of axiality. So we use the question, the framework of, or the concept of axiality to investigate why a certain place becomes important, so to say, as a geohistorical site. Why certain convergences begin to occur at certain places. Why certain things, certain institutions, certain civilizational forms begin to emerge at certain places. And we draw on our trialectic, the alpha, omega, and theta, to try and understand why certain axial places emerge in history. Now, this idea of axiality is also inspired by Karl Jasper's idea of the axial age. Of course, Jaspers uses his idea to refer to a temporal era. We also apply the idea of axiality in a spatial sense. And we will see that we have a way of trying to investigate how the spatial aspect of axiality converges with the temporal aspect and creates axial ages, which again is a conceptual innovation that we borrowed from Jaspers. So that is something to look forward to in the future. Essentially, this concept of axiality allows us to investigate various things. It allows us to investigate, for instance, why a city might begin as a small settlement on, say, a river crossing, because people pass through it regularly, and how it might become a market gradually, and how gradually wealth might begin to accumulate there, how it might become administratively important, and gradually rulers might patronize it and temples might emerge, monasteries, churches, schools, and so on. And importantly, it might become a site for historical memory. Memory accumulates, and stories and myths and experiences of that place are collated into archives of memory and becomes important for history as what you might call a world-making center. So for instance, Rome is an axial place which continues to make its own world, the Roman world, from time to time. And similarly, you could think of a city like Benares, which has its own axiality, or a city like Mecca, which has its own axiality. And in fact, we might think of axial places at various scales. So an entire river valley might be thought of an axial space. The Indus River system might be thought of as an axial space. A coastline such as the Levant might be thought of as an axial space. So a major contribution that draws on this idea of axiality is the concept of orbital spaces or orbital societies. Remember, an axis is a center around which movement revolves. The orbital space is the space around an axial place or space, which might be inhabited by various people who interact with the inhabitants of an axial space. So traditional historians often privilege cores, capitals, and centers of imperial power, centers of agrarian civilizations or literary cultures or bureaucratic space, essentially what we call axial places. But equally important in history, in historical processes, in generating historical transformations, are groups that live outside or beyond these axial centers, in what we might call orbital spaces. These might be various forms of nomads who might connect, raid, conquer, transmit ideas, or even reorganize them. Merchants, of course, are also actors which might emerge from axial centers and travel through orbital space, moving goods and information, and even culture and technologies. We might even have monks and scholars and wanderers of various types who carry texts and doctrines and translations and ritual and ideological systems. You might have mercenaries, diasporas, pilgrims, translators, and scribes who move between societies, and they are all important actors in these orbital spaces. These orbital spaces might be thought of as connective zones that circulate around or between or across axial centers. So it's important that the score that we're not simply trying to reproduce the core periphery model of world systems theory, though we are inspired by it. Axial places are important in themselves, but orbital places are zones of movement and transmission that are fundamentally linked with axial places.